Hey, Silent Pages fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Now stay with us. The story begins. Amelia adjusted the strap of her worn leather satchel as she stepped into the quiet art gallery tucked between two towering glass and concrete buildings downtown. The faint scent of turpentine and old canvas filled the air, blending with the subtle floral undertone of polished wood floors. It was a smell that took her back to long, solitary afternoons in her cramped studio apartment, when her hands were always smudged with paint, and her thoughts were free to wander in colors and textures. She wasn't quite sure why she had agreed to come tonight, but there had been a note, simple and elegant, slipped under the door of her studio earlier that afternoon. Come to the gallery at 7. You might like what you see. No signature, no return address, just an invitation, and something about it made her pulse quicken. Her eyes swept across the room, taking in the canvases lining the walls, the sculptures that seemed to lean from pedestals with quiet intent, and the scattered pools of light cast by hanging bulbs. The gallery was almost empty, save for a few patrons who whispered among themselves, their faces bathed in soft golden glow. At the far corner, where the sunlight from the tall windows met the warm artificial light, a man stood alone. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp yet approachable features, he studied a painting with careful, almost reverent attention. His dark hair fell loosely into his stormy gray eyes, and Amelia felt a strange pull toward him. An inexplicable curiosity mingled with something that felt dangerously like anticipation. She lingered near the doorway, unsure whether to approach. The man sensed her presence and turned, catching her gaze in an instant. His eyes widened fractionally, then softened, and a small, easy smile curved his lips. "Am I interrupting something?" His voice was calm and warm, the kind that could soothe without trying. Amelia shook her head, suddenly aware of the racing beat of her own pulse. "No, I was just looking," she said, though she knew the truth. Her eyes had been drawn to him the moment she entered. He took a step toward her, a hand extended in casual invitation rather than formality. "I'm Lucas," he said. "I don't often see people linger over the corner pieces." Amelia hesitated, then allowed herself to take his hand. It was firm, grounding, yet gentle, leaving a faint warmth that lingered after they parted. "Amelia," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. A chuckle escaped them both, a brief acknowledgement of first encounter awkwardness that melted quickly into a comfortable rhythm. Just then, a small hand tugged at Amelia's sleeve. "Mom, look!" a boy exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement and mischief. She knelt instinctively, ruffling his dark hair. "Yes, it's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Look how the colors blend." The boy, Jonah, blinked up at her, completely captivated. Lucas watched silently, an unreadable expression playing over his features. There was something about the ease with which Amelia interacted with Jonah, her patience, her humor, her genuine attentiveness, that seemed to momentarily unmoor the carefully controlled composure he usually maintained. As they wandered from painting to painting, conversation unfolded with a surprising naturalness. They spoke of art, travel, dreams long deferred, and philosophies about life that seemed at once whimsical and deeply grounded. Lucas found himself laughing more freely than he had in months, his usual guardedness softening under Amelia's gentle curiosity. Jonah chimed in at intervals with sharp, unfiltered observations, reminding Lucas of the unguarded simplicity of children, how they could see truths adults often overlooked. At one point, Amelia paused at a large, abstract canvas, running a finger along the edge of a frame as if feeling for the artist's intention. "Do you ever wonder if the world sees what we really intend?" she mused. Lucas tilted his head, intrigued by the question. "Sometimes," he said, "but I think some things are only meant to be felt, not fully understood." Amelia smiled, and for a moment, they stood together in silence, letting the colors of the painting wash over them and weave a quiet bond between strangers who were no longer strangers. As the night deepened, the gallery seemed to shrink around them, the ambient noise fading into a gentle background hum. Lucas felt an unfamiliar pull to speak, to say something meaningful, yet words faltered on his tongue. Amelia, sensing the shift, offered a tentative smile. "I'm glad I came tonight," she said softly. Her eyes glimmered with unspoken acknowledgement of the shared energy in the room. Lucas returned the smile, a rare, unguarded expression that left his usual formality behind. "So am I," he said, voice low and earnest. Jonah, who had been darting between exhibits, suddenly grabbed Lucas's hand and tugged him toward a sculpture that resembled a twisting column of light. "Look at this, mister. Isn't it amazing?" he shouted, eyes alight with wonder. Lucas crouched, letting Jonah explain every detail with unabashed excitement. Amelia observed quietly, her heart swelling. It struck her that this night, which had begun with so much uncertainty, had become a delicate tapestry of connection, laughter, and quiet revelation. By the time the gallery lights dimmed to signal closing, Amelia realized she had forgotten about everything outside the gallery, the stresses, the deadlines, the endless small anxieties. Lucas, too, felt a rare lightness, as though the careful walls he had built over years were thinning, allowing the faintest warmth to enter. They exchanged numbers with the promise of meeting again, but neither felt that a simple exchange could contain the significance of the evening. The night had been more than a meeting. It was a quiet spark, a tentative opening to something neither had anticipated but both felt deeply. Outside, the city pulsed with life, cars honking, lights flickering, the distant hum of nightlife. But Amelia and Lucas walked away from the gallery, as if moving through a separate reality, each step echoing the shared understanding that had taken root in the dimly lit corner of an art gallery. Neither knew exactly what awaited, but both felt the undeniable promise of beginnings, fragile yet potent, suspended in the cool night air. The following morning, Amelia woke to the soft hum of city life outside her small apartment window. The golden light of early sun streamed in, scattering across her unmade bed and the scattered brushes on the floor. She rubbed her eyes, feeling a lingering warmth in her chest from the night before. The gallery, the laughter, the shared looks with Lucas, they played over and over in her mind like a favorite painting she couldn't put down. But there was also a prickling uncertainty. Was the connection real, or was it just the thrill of novelty? Jonah bounded into her room, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Mom, can we go to the park today? I want to show Mr. Lucas my new drawing." Amelia smiled, running her hand through his hair. "We'll see," she said, though inside, she knew she wanted to see him again more than anything else. She couldn't explain it, not fully. Something about Lucas had lodged itself firmly in her mind. A puzzle piece she hadn't known was missing. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas stirred awake in his sleek, minimalist apartment. The city stretched endlessly beyond his windows, yet none of its grandiosity could match the pull of thoughts about Amelia and Jonah. He poured himself a coffee, fingers tapping rhythmically against the cup as he replayed every detail of the gallery, every laugh, every glance. Normally, his life moved with precise timing, meetings, calls, and carefully curated encounters. But this morning, he felt disoriented, caught between a world of obligation and a world that had suddenly become more vibrant, more personal. Later that afternoon, Amelia found herself at a small park tucked behind a row of brick buildings. Jonah ran ahead, drawing elaborate patterns in the sandbox with a stick. Lucas approached quietly, carrying a sketchbook and a small thermos. "You made it," Amelia said, a smile tugging at her lips. Lucas chuckled softly. "I promised I would, and I was curious to see the artist's apprentice in action." Jonah threw himself at Lucas's legs in greeting, and for the first time, Amelia noticed the ease with which Lucas interacted with the child. It wasn't forced, it wasn't calculated. It was natural, effortless, as if he had been part of their small world all along. As the afternoon waned, they sat on a worn wooden bench, the city humming around them but distant, like a muted backdrop. Amelia sketched idly in her notebook, her hand moving almost unconsciously, while Lucas flipped open his sketchbook, revealing intricate drawings of abstract shapes and cityscapes. "You draw?" she asked, genuinely impressed. Lucas smiled, a brief flash of vulnerability crossing his face. "I used to. Not much time these days." He tapped a pencil against the page. "But I've always loved capturing moments. People, light, shadows, little things others overlook." Amelia felt a pang of recognition. That was exactly what she saw in him last night at the gallery. The attention to detail, the depth behind the carefully controlled exterior. Jonah, ever curious, leaned over Lucas's shoulder. "Can I try?" Lucas handed him the pencil with a gentle nod, guiding the boy's small fingers over the paper. Amelia watched them together, and her heart swelled with a mix of admiration and something deeper she hadn't anticipated, trust. Lucas wasn't just polite or charming. He was patient, present, willing to step into their world without hesitation or pretense. But just as the afternoon unfolded with easy laughter and playful sketches, a shadow flickered over Lucas's expression, a subtle tightening around his eyes, a small sigh he tried to disguise. "Everything okay?" Amelia asked, sensing the change instantly. Lucas hesitated, then shook his head, forcing a smile. "Business matters," he said, vague and distant. Amelia sensed it was more than that. She had learned to read expressions, to see the cracks beneath even the most polished surfaces. You don't have to tell me now, she said softly, placing a reassuring hand on his. But I hope you know you can. The next few days passed in a delicate balance of tension and delight. Amelia and Jonah settled into a routine of small adventures, library visits, impromptu ice cream trips, quiet afternoons drawing in the park, while Lucas managed to weave himself into their rhythm. Each moment, each laugh, each shared glance strengthened the fragile bridge between them. Yet the shadow remained, faint but persistent, a reminder that Lucas carried burdens she could not yet fully see. One evening, they found themselves walking along the riverfront, the city lights reflecting like scattered jewels across the water. Jonah ran ahead, shouting at passing ducks, while Amelia and Lucas walked more slowly, side by side. Amelia's voice broke the silence. I feel like I'm seeing a side of you no one else gets to see. Lucas's gaze lingered on her, gray eyes searching, conflicted. It's complicated, he admitted. My life is full of expectations, responsibilities, people who assume they know me. He paused, swallowing. I'm not used to being seen. Really seen. Amelia felt the weight in his words, the carefully constructed walls she could already sense around him. She reached out, brushing her fingers against his hand. Then start small, she said gently. I don't need all of you at once. Just let me in, step by step. Lucas looked at her, something raw flickering across his face. Fear, longing, maybe hope. He wanted to speak, to confess every thought and worry, but the words stuck, caught in the cage of habit and control he had built over years. The moment stretched, filled with the sound of water lapping at the riverbank, distant horns, and Jonah's delighted shouts. Finally, Lucas exhaled, the tension in his shoulders softening just a fraction. Step by step, he echoed, almost as if testing the words for truth. Amelia smiled, squeezing his hand. Step by step. And so they walked onward, through the soft glow of the city night, each carrying pieces of themselves they hadn't shared before. Lucas carried his walls, his fears, and responsibilities. Amelia carried her patience, her humor, and her unwavering warmth. Jonah, in his innocent and unfiltered joy, carried the thread that bound them together, reminding both adults that life was meant to be lived with openness, laughter, and small, persistent acts of love. By the time they returned to Amelia's apartment, Jonah was asleep in her arms, and the quiet hum of the city filled the spaces between them. Lucas lingered in the doorway, hesitant. Thank you, he said softly, voice low, almost vulnerable. For everything today. Amelia smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from his face. No, thank you. For being willing to try. He nodded, lingering a moment longer before finally stepping away, the faintest trace of a smile playing across his lips. As Amelia closed the door, she leaned against it, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She didn't know what the future held. Lucas's life was complicated, full of shadows and obligations. But for the first time in a long time, she felt the stirring of hope. And maybe, just maybe, hope was enough to start with. The next morning, Amelia woke to the shrill ring of her phone. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Hello? She answered, trying to mask her nervousness. Amelia Miller? The voice was formal, clipped. This is Claire Donovan from Ashford Realty. We need to speak about an urgent matter concerning the gallery lease. Amelia frowned. Urgent? Yes. There's been a development. You need to come in immediately. Before she could ask more, the line went dead. Amelia sank onto her bed, dread coiling in her chest. The gallery that had been her sanctuary, the place where Jonah had found his first friends, the place where she'd felt a flicker of life beyond work and parenting, was threatened. She called Lucas as Jonah played with his action figures nearby. His voice on the line was calm, grounding. What's wrong? The gallery. The lease, it's in jeopardy. They want to raise the rent, and I don't know if I can handle it. Her hands trembled slightly, gripping the phone like a lifeline. Lucas's voice softened. We'll figure it out. Step by step. I'll be there. By mid-morning, Lucas arrived at the gallery. He wore a casual blazer and jeans, his demeanor calm but alert. Jonah ran to him, hugging his leg with unreserved joy. Amelia watched the interaction, her chest tightening with a mixture of admiration and relief. Lucas had a way with Jonah that was effortless, natural, and yet it highlighted the contrast with his otherwise rigid, controlled adult life. They stepped into the gallery office, a cramped space filled with dusty catalogs, paint-splattered floors, and the faint scent of turpentine. Amelia explained the situation in rapid, anxious bursts. Claire says if I can't guarantee the rent by next month, they'll evict me. I don't even know how I'd. Stop, Lucas interrupted, placing a hand gently on her arm. Let's think logically. Panic never solved anything. Show me the numbers. Let's figure out a plan. Hours passed as they combed through invoices, rent agreements, and budget sheets. Lucas's mind worked methodically, his gaze precise, almost unnervingly sharp. Amelia couldn't help noticing how different he seemed here compared to their softer, playful interactions in the park or at the riverfront. This was Lucas the strategist, the man used to controlling outcomes and solving crises, and she felt both comforted and intimidated. Jonah, meanwhile, had claimed a corner of the gallery as his own studio, sketching with crayons on scraps of paper, occasionally holding them up to Lucas for approval. "Look, it's a superhero family," he announced proudly. Lucas smiled, kneeling to inspect the drawings. "You've got talent," he said, genuinely impressed. "Your figures have energy." Jonah beamed, and Amelia felt a warmth spread through her chest. Even in crisis, there was space for joy. By late afternoon, they had mapped out a plan. Lucas offered to reach out to his contacts, potential investors who might be willing to sponsor local art initiatives. Amelia felt a flicker of hope, tinged with guilt. Lucas's life was already complicated. He had his own pressures, responsibilities she barely understood. Yet here he was, stepping into her world, carrying some of her burden without hesitation. But just as the sense of progress settled over them, Amelia's phone buzzed again. Another call, this one from a number she recognized all too well, her ex, Michael. The memories hit like a cold wave. The arguments, the bitter separations, the nights she had cried alone while Jonah slept in the next room. "Amelia," Michael's voice was smooth, controlled, yet carrying an undercurrent of manipulation. "I hear the gallery's in trouble. Maybe this is a chance for us to revisit old arrangements." Her grip tightened on the phone. "Michael, don't. I'm not interested." "Oh, but think about it. I could help. We could make things work again. For Jonah, for you. Don't you want stability?" His tone dripped with false concern, and Amelia felt her resolve waver momentarily. Stability, yes, but at what cost? At the cost of her hard-won independence? She squared her shoulders. "No, I've built a life with my own terms. I don't need your help, and I certainly don't want to be manipulated into a partnership that ended for a reason." Michael's laugh was cold, sharp. "Suit yourself. But remember, Amelia, sometimes we get what we want only when we're willing to compromise." He hung up. Amelia's fingers trembled as she clutched the phone, anger and fear warring inside her. Lucas, standing behind her, had witnessed the exchange. His gray eyes darkened, and his jaw clenched. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Amelia nodded, but her chest heaved. "He's persistent," she admitted. "But I'm not backing down." Lucas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to. Not alone. We handle it together." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Amelia's heart skipped, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to lean into the support he offered, to imagine a life where burdens were shared, not borne alone. That night, Amelia lay in bed, Jonah asleep beside her, replaying the day's events. The gallery was still at risk, Michael still a looming threat, but she felt a shift within her. She wasn't alone. Lucas had stepped into her life not just as a partner, but as an ally. And Jonah, innocent, joyful, unguarded, was the living reminder of what was worth protecting. Across town, Lucas stared out his apartment window, city lights flickering like a constellation of possibilities. He had seen Amelia's strength, her vulnerability, and the small, bright spark of hope she carried for Jonah. But he also recognized the walls she had built, the careful measures to protect her world from intrusion. He would have to move carefully, with patience, determination, and a willingness to let her lead as much as he guided. The next day brought a storm, literally and figuratively. Rain pounded the streets, turning city gutters into rushing torrents. Amelia and Jonah huddled under umbrellas, trudging toward the gallery. Lucas met them halfway, drenched but unbothered, his presence commanding yet reassuring. "We face it together," he said simply. Amelia nodded, squeezing Jonah's hand, and together they pushed open the doors of the gallery. Inside, the office was a flurry of activity, letters from potential investors, notices from the landlord, and estimates for emergency repairs strewn across every surface. Amelia's heart pounded. This was the crucible, the moment where her independence, her fears, and her hopes collided. And at her side, Lucas remained calm, a steady force. Hours blurred into evening. Calls were made, emails sent, and Lucas's network proved invaluable. Slowly, hope began to return to the gallery. Amelia felt the tension in her shoulders ease, replaced with cautious optimism. Yet as they finally closed the office for the night, Jonah leaning against Amelia with a tired but contented smile, Lucas's gaze lingered on her. "You're incredible," he said softly. "I don't know if you realize how much strength you carry. And yet, you let people in eventually." Amelia smiled, a flicker of color warming her cheeks. I've had to learn, she said, that not every hand extended is a threat. Some are there to help, if you let them. Lucas's eyes softened. Then let me help. Let me stay? Step by step, like you said. Amelia's lips curved into a gentle smile, hope sparking brighter than ever. Step by step, she echoed. And so, as the rain subsided outside and the city lights reflected on the slick streets, the trio, Amelia, Jonah, and Lucas, stood together, a fragile but growing bond forming against a backdrop of uncertainty and challenge. Outside forces might test them. Personal and professional storms threatened to uproot their lives. But for the first time, they faced the future united, ready to confront whatever came next. The following morning, the city was shrouded in a dense fog, as if reflecting Amelia's own clouded thoughts. Jonah tugged at her sleeve, eager to get to school, while Amelia clutched her coffee like a lifeline. Lucas waited outside, leaning casually against his car. He greeted them with a calm nod, though his eyes betrayed concern. Ready? He asked. Amelia swallowed, bracing herself. As ready as I'll ever be. The gallery was quiet when they arrived. The threat from the landlord had grown urgent. Official notices now lined the office desk, each one more intimidating than the last. Amelia felt her chest tighten. She knew she could face these challenges, but the weight was exhausting. Lucas stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We handle this strategically. Panic accomplishes nothing. Hours passed in a haze of phone calls, emails, and meetings. Lucas coordinated with potential investors, negotiating terms, while Amelia managed the staff and attempted to salvage damaged contracts. Jonah, though cheerful, sensed the tension. At one point, he approached Amelia with a small drawing of a family holding hands under a rainbow. This is us, he said. No matter what happens, we stick together. Amelia blinked back tears, touched by the boy's innocence and unwavering faith. Then came a knock at the gallery door. Amelia opened it to find Michael standing there, his expression a mix of charm and calculated menace. Amelia, he said smoothly, I thought we might discuss arrangements before things get more complicated. Her pulse raced. I told you yesterday, I'm not interested. Leave. Michael's smile didn't waver. I'm only trying to help. You're under so much pressure. Sometimes people have to make compromises to survive. Not me, she replied firmly, her voice steady despite the fear thrumming in her chest. I've built this life on my own terms. I won't let anyone, especially you, undermine that. Lucas stepped forward, his presence towering in the small office. She's right. You're done here, Michael. The cold authority in his voice left no room for negotiation. Michael's eyes flickered, calculating, before he gave a small, tight smile. Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you. He turned and left, leaving a lingering chill behind. Amelia exhaled, tension bleeding from her shoulders, only to realize that the day wasn't over. A call from the landlord confirmed a surprise inspection, and their future depended on a detailed financial report being ready by the afternoon. Amelia's stomach knotted. The numbers, the deadlines, the looming threat, it felt suffocating. Lucas crouched beside her, lowering his voice. Focus. Step by step. Break it into manageable parts. You don't have to do it alone. His hand brushed hers, a grounding touch that made her pulse skip. Amelia nodded, drawing a deep breath, grateful for his support, yet painfully aware of her dependence on him. They spent the morning preparing the documents. Amelia drafted the financial reports while Lucas reviewed contracts and made urgent calls. Jonah, sensing the seriousness of the moment, stayed close, occasionally offering observations that were surprisingly insightful. Mommy, what if we asked people to help, like superheroes? He suggested with wide, earnest eyes. Amelia smiled through the stress. Maybe we can, Jonah. Maybe we can. By mid-afternoon, the landlord arrived, flanked by a stern assistant. Amelia and Lucas presented their documentation with precision, their combined efforts evident in the smooth delivery. Amelia explained the gallery's financial situation, emphasizing growth potential, community impact, and long-term sustainability. Lucas added a professional gravitas, negotiating payment arrangements and investor guarantees. The landlord, a pragmatic woman named Mrs. Grayson, studied the paperwork intently. Her gaze shifted between Amelia and Lucas, noting the synergy, the careful balance of passion and pragmatism. You've put a lot of thought into this, she said finally, and your documentation is thorough. I'm inclined to give you an extension, provided the agreed payments are met on schedule. Amelia exhaled, relief flooding her body. Thank you, she whispered, her hands trembling slightly. As the landlord left, Jonah leapt into Amelia's arms, cheering. We did it. We're heroes. Lucas laughed, ruffling Jonah's hair. Amelia hugged her son tightly, feeling a profound sense of triumph. Yet beneath the elation was the realization that life would continue to challenge them, in ways both predictable and unforeseen. Later that evening, Amelia and Lucas walked along the river, Jonah skipping ahead, collecting leaves and tossing them into the water. The city lights reflected off the river, sparkling like scattered stars. Amelia broke the silence first. "Thank you for today. I don't think I could have done this without you." Lucas's expression softened. "We did it together. You're stronger than you realize, Amelia. And I want to be here, in every part of it, with you and Jonah." His words were quiet, but they carried a weight that made Amelia's chest tighten. She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Lucas, sometimes I'm afraid. Afraid of depending on someone again. Afraid of losing control. But I trust you. Step by step, I can trust you." He smiled gently, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "And I'll be here. Every step." The promise hung between them, unspoken but understood. That night, as Amelia tucked Jonah into bed, she felt the weight of the day lift slightly. There was still uncertainty ahead, the gallery, Michael, the ever-present pressures of life. But for the first time, she felt a sense of partnership. Someone who would fight beside her, not behind her, not ahead of her, but alongside her. Meanwhile, Lucas stared at his apartment ceiling long into the night, reflecting on the fragile yet resilient bond forming between them. Amelia's courage, Jonah's innocence, and the delicate trust being cultivated. These were forces he had never anticipated encountering in his life. Yet they had become the center of his world, a reason to challenge his own walls and fears. And far from the city lights, in a quiet moment of contemplation, Lucas realized that the coming days would test them even more. The gallery might survive, but external pressures would continue to mount. Michael would return in some form. And yet, the connection between him, Amelia, and Jonah, messy, tentative, but real, was growing stronger. The only choice was to face the storm together, each uncertain step building toward a foundation they could trust. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Amelia's apartment, painting the room in warm gold. Jonah bounded out of bed, already dressed, clutching his favorite toy car. Amelia smiled, though a part of her still carried the tension of the previous day. She had survived the gallery crisis, but her heart knew the storm wasn't entirely over. Lucas arrived as promised, holding a coffee in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. "Morning," he said softly, his eyes lingering on her just a moment longer than necessary. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. "Morning," she replied, keeping her tone casual, though the warmth in her chest betrayed her calm. They spent the morning at the gallery, checking on the staff and reviewing upcoming events. Jonah ran around, helping deliver small paintings to temporary display areas, his laughter echoing off the walls. Amelia's attention constantly shifted between her son, the gallery's needs, and Lucas, who moved with quiet efficiency, offering advice and handling delicate situations with skill. Around noon, Amelia noticed a delivery truck arriving. She approached, frowning as two men stepped out, carrying a large crate. "Amelia right?" one asked. She nodded, and the crate was wheeled inside. The box bore the unmistakable emblem of Michael's company. Her stomach tightened. Lucas noticed her expression. "What is it?" Amelia shook her head. "I don't know. Probably more of his games." They opened the crate cautiously. Inside were copies of an art catalog, each page highlighting a new collection, some works strikingly similar to pieces from Amelia's own gallery. Jonah peeked over her shoulder. "Mommy, did he copy you?" Amelia knelt beside him. "It looks like it, honey. But copying doesn't mean it's better. Our gallery is special because of the heart we put into it." Jonah nodded solemnly, as if he understood. Lucas, meanwhile, examined the materials with a critical eye. "This could confuse your clients," he said. "We need to respond carefully, show what makes your gallery unique, not react impulsively." For the next several hours, Amelia, Lucas, and the staff worked tirelessly. They crafted a public announcement, highlighting the originality and creativity of the gallery, emphasizing the community involvement and personal stories behind each piece. Lucas handled the messaging with a calm authority. Amelia provided the artistic perspective, and Jonah, innocent yet surprisingly insightful, suggested a few touches that humanized the statement. By evening, the announcement was live, and the response was immediate. Patrons, local artists, and supporters flooded social media with messages of encouragement. The gallery's authenticity shone through, overshadowing Michael's shadowy tactics. Amelia allowed herself a small, victorious smile, though the exhaustion was settling deep in her muscles. Lucas noticed and approached, his hand brushing hers. "You did incredible today," he said quietly, his voice carrying a sincerity that made her heart flutter. Amelia glanced at him, feeling an unfamiliar vulnerability. "We did it together," she replied, her voice soft. They decided to take a break and left the gallery, walking through the nearby park. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers despite the late hour. Jonah ran ahead, chasing squirrels and tossing leaves, his laughter blending with the rustling of the trees. Amelia and Lucas walked in silence for a few moments, the weight of the day slowly easing. Then Amelia stopped, turning to face him. "Lucas, I don't know how to say this, but I feel connected to you. Not just as someone helping me, but deeper." Her cheeks warmed. Lucas reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Amelia, I felt the same. But I know this is complicated. You have Jonah, the gallery, your life. I don't want to rush or pressure you." His gray eyes searched hers, earnest and open. "I just want to be here, with you, wherever you let me." Amelia swallowed, emotions churning. She had spent years guarding herself, protecting her heart. Yet here was someone who seemed to understand her, who valued not just her success, but the fragile, messy pieces of her life. She reached out, letting her hand rest in his. "Step by step," she whispered, "like we handle everything else." Lucas smiled, a quiet, contented curve of his lips. "Step by step," he echoed. They continued walking, hand in hand, letting the rhythm of their steps speak the words they were not yet ready to say aloud. Later that evening, back at the apartment, Jonah fell asleep in Amelia's arms. She and Lucas sat quietly on the sofa, the soft hum of the city beyond the windows. The earlier tension of the day felt distant now, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. Lucas tilted his head toward her. "I don't want to pretend anymore," he said softly. "I care for you. Not as a project, not as someone to protect, but as someone I want in my life. You and Jonah." Amelia's eyes glistened. "I care for you too, Lucas. But I've learned to be cautious. I can't risk letting someone in and losing them." He nodded. "I understand. But I'm willing to earn your trust, every day, if you let me." Amelia felt a surge of emotion. The weight of her responsibilities, the constant stress, and the lingering shadow of past hurts had always kept her guarded. But Lucas's presence, patient and unwavering, made the barriers seem less formidable. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope, not for perfection, not for a life without challenges, but for the possibility of shared strength and partnership. That night, as she watched Jonah sleep and Lucas read quietly beside her, Amelia realized that life's storms were inevitable. But with the right people by her side, even the fiercest tempests could be weathered. And in that realization, she found a tentative peace, a quiet courage, and a willingness to open her heart just a little more. The morning sun barely pierced the foggy streets as Amelia prepared to leave for the gallery. Her heart was heavier than usual. Last night's small victory against Michael's attempts to tarnish her gallery's reputation had given her hope, but she knew storms weren't truly over. There were still challenges ahead, unseen currents threatening to drag her under. Jonah hopped from his bed, tugging at her sleeve. "Mommy, can Lucas come today?" he asked, eyes wide with innocent expectation. Amelia hesitated. Lucas had proven himself trustworthy, yet she worried about how their relationship might be perceived if mixed with professional matters. But seeing Jonah's hopeful face, she relented. "Yes, honey, he can come." By mid-morning, Lucas arrived with quiet confidence. He had brought his laptop and a stack of documents, prepared to help Amelia with an upcoming high-profile exhibit. "Morning," he said softly, his gaze lingering. Amelia felt a warmth, but quickly shifted focus to the task ahead. They worked side by side, reviewing contracts, contacting artists, and organizing logistics. The hours passed in a mix of silent concentration and occasional teasing banter. Jonah darted between them, offering whimsical advice, often pointing out inconsistencies with the sharp logic of a child who noticed everything adults overlooked. Around noon, Amelia received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was smooth, calculating, carrying the unmistakable edge of someone used to power and influence. "Ms. Wright," Michael's tone cut through the line. "I see you've been busy protecting your little gallery. But don't think you can outmaneuver me forever. You'll see your victories are temporary." Amelia's hand tightened around the phone. She knew she couldn't show fear, not now. "Michael, I've already stated our position. Copying my work won't give you credibility or authenticity." Michael chuckled softly. But authenticity is subjective, isn't it? Enjoy the calm while it lasts." The line went dead, leaving an unsettling silence. Lucas noticed her pale expression. "What did he say?" Amelia exhaled slowly, her voice steady. "Just a reminder that storms come in many forms." By mid-afternoon, a meeting was scheduled with a prominent investor who had previously expressed skepticism about Amelia's gallery. Lucas accompanied her, providing backup for questions about finances and growth potential. The investor, a sharp-eyed woman named Clarissa, scrutinized every figure and plan, testing Amelia's resolve. "You've done well defending your gallery," Clarissa said finally, leaning back in her chair. "But growth requires courage and trust. Are you ready to expand, or are you content maintaining a safe, limited space?" Amelia felt Jonah's earlier words echo in her mind, the importance of heart and authenticity. "I am ready," she said firmly. "Our gallery is more than walls and paintings. It's a community. Growth doesn't mean compromising that." Clarissa studied her, lips pressed in a thin line, then nodded. "Very well. Let's see what we can do together." Relief washed over Amelia, but she didn't let it soften her. Lucas squeezed her hand under the table, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together. Evening approached, bringing with it a subtle unease. Amelia noticed Jonah had been quieter than usual, more pensive. "Jonah, what's on your mind?" she asked, kneeling beside him. I don't like Michael," he admitted, voice small. "He's trying to ruin everything you worked for." Amelia hugged him tightly. "I know, sweetie, but we're stronger together. And we have people who believe in us, people who care." Jonah nodded, resting his head against her shoulder. Later that night, after Jonah was asleep, Amelia and Lucas sat in the dim glow of the living room. A stack of new gallery proposals spread before them. Silence fell, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was contemplative, filled with shared understanding. "I worry about him," Amelia confessed, breaking the quiet. "Michael, he doesn't play fair. He doesn't care about consequences." Lucas reached for her hand. "I know, but fear isn't what drives you. Passion does. You've faced worse, and you've come out stronger. I'm not worried about your strength. I'm here to help you channel it." Amelia felt a flutter of something unfamiliar, a mix of vulnerability and trust. She leaned into him, the comfort of his presence seeping through her defenses. "I don't want to be weak," she murmured. "You're not," Lucas said firmly. "But admitting that you need support doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And you're brave enough to fight, but wise enough to let someone stand with you." The room felt quiet, but charged with a deep, unspoken understanding. In the shadows of past battles and looming threats, a fragile intimacy formed, binding them together in a delicate but growing trust. The next day brought a new challenge, a high-profile auction for one of Amelia's upcoming exhibits, attended by critics, collectors, and a few influential socialites known for their biting reviews. Amelia felt the tension coil in her stomach. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, recalling Jonah's faith in her and Lucas's quiet support. Jonah tugged at her sleeve again. "Mommy, remember what I said? You're the best. And you have Lucas." She smiled, squeezing his hand. "Thank you, honey. I need that reminder." Lucas arrived, dressed sharply, a calm presence in the whirlwind of pre-auction chaos. "Ready?" he asked softly. Amelia nodded. Together, they entered the venue, the weight of expectation pressing down, but the solidarity between them making it manageable. Critics whispered, attendees mingled, and the auctioneer began his cadence. Amelia felt the familiar racing heartbeat, the old fears clawing at the edges of her confidence. But with Lucas at her side, Jonah's words echoing in her mind, and the gallery's community watching and believing, she stepped forward, poised and grounded. And in that moment, Amelia realized something profound. It wasn't the absence of fear that defined courage, it was the ability to move forward despite it. The gallery doors closed behind them with a soft click, and the hum of the city outside seemed distant, almost unreal. Amelia's pulse was still racing from the confrontation earlier that afternoon. Michael had appeared at a private preview, flanked by lawyers and critics, his presence like a shadow stretching across the bright space she had fought so hard to create. "Amelia," Lucas said quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face him alone." She shook her head, a wry smile flickering across her lips. "Alone? Maybe. But I won't let him intimidate everyone else, either." Michael's entrance had been theatrically timed. Cameras clicked as he entered, casually charming the gathered guests while his eyes found Amelia like a predator locking onto its prey. "I didn't think you'd make it this far without me," he said, voice dripping with condescension. Amelia took a deep breath. "This gallery isn't about you. It's about the artists, the community, and everyone who believes in what we do." A crowd began to gather, sensing tension, whispers threading through the air. Michael smirked, turning to a group of critics nearby. "Let's see how far passion can really take someone." Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. "He's testing you. Don't let him get under your skin." Amelia's eyes flicked to the newest exhibit, a vivid series of abstract paintings she had curated herself. The colors seemed to vibrate in a tense atmosphere, reflections of energy and resilience. She walked toward the crowd, shoulders straight, and let the artwork speak first. Michael tried to interject, pointing out a flaw in one painting's provenance, but Amelia countered smoothly, citing the artist's meticulous documentation and the critical acclaim from prior exhibitions. Her voice was steady, but beneath it thrummed an undercurrent of controlled fire. Jonah appeared at the edge of the gallery, clutching Lucas's hand, eyes wide. "Mommy," he whispered, "you're amazing." Amelia smiled at him briefly, drawing strength from the child's unwavering faith. She returned to Michael, her gaze sharp. "Criticism without understanding is irrelevant. Our work stands on merit, not intimidation." Michael's lips pressed into a thin line, but he did not push further, at least not yet. Instead, he began circulating among the high-profile attendees, whispering doubts and subtle insinuations. Amelia watched, noting the ripple effect, but she refused to falter. Lucas remained close, subtly steering conversations back to Amelia's points, reinforcing her authority without making a scene. The synergy between them was quiet but undeniable, a shared rhythm of strategy and trust. Then came the moment that would define the evening. A key collector, known for being skeptical and outspoken, stepped forward to inspect a particularly bold installation. Michael leaned in, ready to inject doubt, but Amelia anticipated it. "This piece," she said confidently, "represents resilience. Every stroke embodies struggle and triumph, a reflection of life's unpredictable challenges." The artist drew from real experiences, not hypothetical scenarios. The collector's eyes lingered on the canvas, nodding slowly. "Remarkable," he murmured. "The emotion, it's authentic." Amelia allowed herself a brief exhale of relief, but Michael's shadow remained. He approached her directly, now dangerously close. "Impressive," he said smoothly. "But people can admire a painting and still question the mind behind it. Are you ready for that?" Amelia met his gaze, unwavering. "I've been questioned my whole life. I've learned to stand regardless of the opinions around me. That includes yours." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Michael's expression flickered, frustration, incredulity, maybe even respect, but it was quickly masked by his usual veneer. He moved away, leaving a trail of murmurs. Amelia could feel the energy shift. The gallery seemed to exhale with her, the tension easing as more guests expressed genuine admiration. Lucas approached, brushing a hand across her arm. "You did it," he whispered. Amelia felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a combination of triumph and something deeper. Yet even as the threat receded, Amelia's mind couldn't quiet. Michael would return, or another would take his place. Power and ambition were relentless, and she knew this victory was temporary if vigilance faltered. She glanced at Lucas, then Jonah, and realized she didn't have to face it alone. Later, as the crowd thinned, Amelia stood in the center of the gallery, Lucas at her side, Jonah perched nearby on a stool. The soft lighting highlighted the textures of the paintings, the colors vivid yet comforting. Amelia finally allowed herself to breathe. "You know," Lucas said gently, "it's not just about fighting him. It's about what you create and who stands with you while you do it." Amelia smiled, feeling a tenderness in the moment that had nothing to do with the gallery itself. "And who will remind me to breathe when I forget?" Lucas's fingers brushed hers, a small but intimate gesture. "That's my job." Jonah grinned, hopping down from the stool. "And I'll be your cheerleader, Mommy." They laughed together, a sound that seemed to settle the space around them, transforming it from a battlefield into a sanctuary. For the first time in months, Amelia felt a sense of balance. The fight wasn't over, but she had allies she could trust, love she could rely on, and the courage to meet whatever came next. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the gallery's windows, reflecting in the polished floors like constellations in an urban sky. Amelia stood there, thinking about the storms they had weathered and those yet to come. But for now, the night belonged to triumph, connection, and the quiet promise that together, they could withstand anything. The rooftop garden overlooked the city, a quiet oasis suspended above the clamor below. Fairy lights twisted around wrought iron railings, casting a golden glow over the lush greenery. Eleanor stepped onto the terrace, her heels clicking softly against the polished wood. She carried herself with a calm grace, though inside, her thoughts raced. Daniel was already there, leaning casually against the railing, his coat catching the faint breeze. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the distance between them heavy with unspoken words. "You came," Daniel said finally, voice low but steady. "I did," Eleanor replied, setting down her clutch. "I thought it was time we stopped avoiding the inevitable." He smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and tension. "You mean facing everything we've been dancing around for months?" Eleanor nodded, stepping closer. The city stretched beneath them, lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth. Exactly. No more games. No more half-truths. Daniel's eyes softened, but there was still caution, a trace of vulnerability behind the usual confidence. And if I admit I'm terrified, then I'll hold your hand, she said simply, and we'll figure it out together. Fear doesn't scare me when it comes to you. He exhaled, shoulders relaxing. I wish I'd said that sooner. I've been a fool, Eleanor. You're not a fool, she whispered. You're human, and humans are complicated. The air between them shifted, charged with a quiet electricity. Daniel reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Eleanor's eyes followed his hand, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe fully, the tension dissolving in the warmth of his touch. Their conversation turned, naturally, to the gallery, to the challenges they had faced together, to the victories small and large. The city's noise seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their words, the cadence of shared history. You've changed it, Daniel remarked, gesturing toward the terrace. This space, it feels alive, like it's telling a story. Eleanor smiled, tracing the delicate path of lights. It's not just the lights or the flowers. It's what people bring with them. Their energy, their stories, their emotions. That's what makes it alive. Daniel's gaze lingered on her. Just like you, he said softly. You bring life everywhere you go. Even when it's difficult, even when, he faltered, and Eleanor stepped closer, bridging the distance. Even when I make mistakes, she prompted. Even then, he admitted, voice catching slightly. The silence that followed was intimate, neither needing to fill it with words. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying a hint of jasmine and city air. Daniel took a cautious step forward, then another, until they stood almost shoulder to shoulder. Eleanor, he murmured, I want to be honest. Completely. No more hiding. I'm listening, she said, heart thrumming in her chest. He hesitated, then spoke in a rush, unfiltered. I've spent so long afraid of losing control, of failing, of being vulnerable. But you make it impossible to hide from myself. You make me want to try, even when I'm terrified I'll fall. Eleanor's eyes glistened. She reached up, fingers brushing against his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin, the tension in his jaw. I don't want you to hide, she whispered. I want you, all of you. Every fear, every doubt, every triumph. That's the man I care about. For a long moment, they simply held each other's gaze, the city sprawling endlessly beneath them. Daniel's hand found hers, intertwining fingers, anchoring them both. Then we take it step by step, he said, exhaling slowly. No pressure, no expectations. Just us. Eleanor nodded, leaning slightly into him. Just us. A soft chime rang somewhere below, a subtle reminder of the world beyond this terrace. Yet up here, the world felt suspended, paused in a perfect balance of hope and possibility. Then, unexpectedly, a gust of wind swept through the garden, scattering petals from a nearby floral arrangement. Daniel laughed quietly, a genuine, unguarded sound, and Eleanor joined him. The moment was fleeting, yet indelibly etched into memory, a marker of the space where fear met courage and vulnerability met trust. Their conversation resumed, lighter now, touching on plans for the gallery's upcoming season, the artists they would showcase, and dreams that had been long deferred. With every word, the tension eased, replaced by connection, by shared vision, by the recognition of the depth of what they had built together. Night deepened, and the lights twinkled like distant stars. Daniel drew Eleanor close, resting his forehead against hers. Promise me something, he said softly. Anything, she whispered. Promise me we'll never stop choosing each other. No matter the storms, no matter the challenges. Promise me we'll face them together. Eleanor's breath caught, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. I promise, she said, voice firm, yet tender. A silence fell, profound and complete. Then, with a gentle laugh, Daniel lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to the back of her fingers. Good, because I think we're just getting started. And as the night deepened, with the city's pulse beneath them, they remained side by side, hands entwined, hearts aligned. The rooftop was no longer just a space. It was a testament to resilience, to love that had endured, and to the quiet triumph of facing fear together. In that moment, Eleanor realized something essential. Life would always present challenges, shadows, and unexpected turns. But with Daniel by her side, she could meet them all. Not perfectly, not without fear, but with courage, trust, and a love that made every step forward worth taking. The air grew cooler, carrying the distant sounds of nightlife. Yet up here, they were insulated, cocooned in their shared determination. Daniel's arm slid around her waist, Eleanor leaning into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Tomorrow, he said softly, we start planning the next chapter. Eleanor smiled against his chest. I'm ready. And in that quiet, golden glow of the terrace, under a canopy of lights and petals, two souls stood firmly together, prepared to face whatever the future would bring together. The grand hall of the city museum buzzed with anticipation, a soft hum of voices weaving through crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Guests in elegant attire mingled, their laughter occasionally echoing against the high vaulted ceilings. Amelia adjusted her gown, smoothing the fabric with a trembling hand. She had prepared for this night for months, every detail accounted for, but nothing had prepared her for the surge of emotions she felt now. Ethan was already at the center of the room, his posture calm, his steel-gray eyes scanning the crowd. He wore a tailored midnight blue suit, perfectly fitted, a subtle nod to the man he had become. Yet behind the composed exterior, there was tension, a fine wire pulled taut beneath his calm. Amelia took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and stepped forward. The weight of expectation pressed down, but it was nothing compared to the warmth in her chest, the strength she drew from knowing he was there, waiting for her. As she approached, Ethan's gaze lifted, and for a fraction of a second, the entire hall faded away. It was just the two of them, suspended in the quiet tension of the moment. Then, a subtle signal, a nod from him, acknowledged that the night's final chapter was about to begin. The first notes of the orchestra began to rise, delicate and precise. It was a waltz, slow, resonant, a melody that had been chosen carefully, symbolic of beginnings and commitments. Guests took their places, forming a circle around the open floor, the center awaiting the story that would unfold. Ethan extended his hand to Amelia. She hesitated only briefly before placing hers in his. The touch sparked a current of familiarity and intimacy, a reassurance that they would face this together, side by side. "Ready?" he asked, voice low, carrying the weight of their shared history. "I've been ready," she whispered. The music swelled, and they moved together, a slow, deliberate waltz that required trust as much as grace. With each step, each turn, the room seemed to shrink until the only space that mattered was the circle they created together. As they danced, memories flared unbidden, long nights of whispered conversations, moments of quiet reassurance in the middle of storms, laughter shared in sunlit cafes, tears caught on shoulders and in open hands. Every step was a culmination of months of courage, months of honesty, months of choosing each other again and again. The crowd watched in rapt silence, sensing the significance of what was unfolding. But it was not a performance for them. It was a confession, a celebration, a promise made tangible through movement and presence. Ethan's hand tightened slightly around hers, drawing her closer. "Amelia," he murmured, "there's something I need to show you. Something I've been holding back." Her heart quickened. "What is it?" He led her toward a small platform at the side of the hall, discreetly framed by soft lights and trailing ivy. Beneath the illumination lay a set of parallel bars and a raised walkway, tools of determination and perseverance. Ethan paused at the edge, turning to meet her gaze. "I've been training," he admitted, voice steady despite the gravity. "Not just for me, but for us. I wanted this night to be more than words. I wanted to prove that, even after everything, I can rise." Amelia's breath caught, her fingers tightening on his. "Ethan, tonight," he continued, "I want to stand. Not just metaphorically, physically. I want you to see that the steps we've taken together, the trust, the courage, the love, it all matters." For a long moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a controlled inhale, Ethan braced himself against the bars. Muscle and mind engaged, he pushed upward, fighting the memory of limitations, fighting the gravity that had once held him hostage. His legs trembled, quivered, but they held. Inch by inch, he rose, his body trembling with effort, determination burning in every fiber. Gasps rippled through the guests. Amelia's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling as she watched him conquer a battle that had begun months ago, but whose victory was centuries in the making. "Ethan," she whispered, moving closer, her heart a drum in her chest. His eyes met hers, steel-gray and unwavering, shining with triumph and vulnerability intertwined. "I told you," he said, voice husky. "I promised you every step. I meant it." The final few inches were the hardest, but he rose fully upright, crutches held loosely, legs bearing the weight of his body, his resolve. The room erupted in applause, a wave of awe and admiration cascading over the space. Amelia ran forward, embracing him, feeling the strength and frailty coexisting in the man she loved. "You did it," she whispered against his chest, her tears soaking the fabric of his suit. "I did it with you," he replied, kissing the top of her head, the smallest smile breaking through the sweat and tension. And then, Almost instinctively, they moved to the center of the floor once more. The music resumed, swelling with emotion, as they shared a final waltz. This time upright together, hand in hand, hearts aligned. Guests circled them, but they were in a world of their own making, a world where fear could not intrude, where vulnerability was strength, and where love was the most potent force of all. As the last notes lingered, Ethan and Amelia paused, turning to face the crowd. His voice, strong and unwavering, carried through the hall. "Tonight," he began, "I stand not just for myself, but for every step we've taken together, for every choice we've made to trust, to hope, to love. And I choose to continue, every day, every moment, with Amelia." The crowd erupted in cheers, applause crashing like waves. Amelia's eyes glistened, and she pressed a hand to his cheek, their foreheads touching. "And I choose you," she breathed. "Daniel." "Wait. No." Ethan smiled, brushing a stray tear from her cheek. "Always," he said. Outside, the night sky was lit by fireworks, a cascade of color and sound that mirrored the joy and release inside the hall. Together, they stepped into the city streets, hands intertwined, hearts beating in unison. It wasn't perfection, it wasn't flawless, but it was real. It was theirs. Amelia looked up at him, eyes shining. "So what's next?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Whatever we want, whatever we decide, together." And in the quiet aftermath of triumph, love, and resilience, they walked forward, two souls, one heart, facing the future without fear, with hope, and with the unshakable certainty that the steps they had taken, both literal and metaphorical, had led them exactly where they were meant to be. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the wide windows of the little cafe, painting the wooden floors with warm gold. Amelia stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, watching Leo dart between tables, weaving through the crowd with the carefree energy of a child who felt entirely safe in the world. She smiled, a quiet, reflective smile, the kind that comes after nights of turmoil and mornings filled with clarity. Ethan entered quietly, the soft click of his shoes against the wooden floor announcing his presence without disrupting the intimate atmosphere. His gray eyes, calm yet alert, found hers immediately, and she felt that familiar flutter in her chest, the one that had never quite left her since the first moment they'd met. "Morning," he said, voice low and warm. "Morning," she replied, her heart quickening. She set down her mug, standing to meet him halfway. For a second, it felt as if the world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only the three of them, Amelia, Ethan, and Leo, together in a fragile bubble of quiet contentment. Leo ran forward, tugging at Ethan's hand. "Daddy, look, I made a drawing for you." He held up a scribbled sheet of paper covered in bright colors and jagged lines. "It's us. You, me, and Mommy saving the world." Ethan bent down, smiling genuinely, a rare warmth breaking across his face. "This is incredible, Leo. I think it's our best mission yet." He ruffled the boy's hair, feeling a pang of gratitude for the small, ordinary moments that now defined his days. Amelia watched them, heart swelling. It wasn't the grand gestures or the expensive gifts that had finally cemented their bond. It was these ordinary, fleeting moments, laughter shared over a cup of coffee, hands intertwined across a table, a child's imagination bridging their hearts. The cafe bell jingled again, announcing another customer, but Ethan remained rooted to the spot. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, almost to himself, "about everything, about how fragile life feels, and yet how strong it can be when we choose to be brave." Amelia tilted her head, curious. And I realized," he continued, voice gaining confidence, "that standing up for ourselves, facing our fears, and loving without conditions, that's what truly matters. Not the wealth, not the success, not even the titles we carry." He gestured around, encompassing the simple beauty of the cafe and the life they were building. "It's this, you, Leo, us." Amelia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, a mix of joy and relief. "I couldn't agree more," she whispered. He reached for her hand, holding it gently yet firmly. "I don't want another day to pass without you knowing that I'm here, and I choose this family, every day, for the rest of my life." Leo clapped his small hands excitedly. "You mean forever?" Ethan crouched slightly, leveling himself with his son. "Forever, Leo. Every single day." The three of them shared a quiet moment, a unity so profound it rendered the clatter of cups and the chatter of other patrons almost non-existent. The simple act of holding hands felt monumental, a promise made without words but with all the weight of lived experience. Later, the city lights began to shimmer as dusk approached, reflecting in the windows of their small apartment. Ethan wheeled himself to the balcony, Amelia at his side, Leo perched on a stool between them. The skyline stretched endlessly, a reminder of challenges faced and overcome. Do you remember the first time we danced? Amelia asked softly, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. How could I forget? Ethan replied, smiling. You stepped on my toes more times than I can count, but somehow it felt right. Perfect, even. Amelia laughed, a sound of pure, unburdened happiness. And now look at us, standing together, literally and figuratively, through everything. I never thought we'd get here. We did, Ethan said firmly, because we never gave up, because we trusted each other, and because we learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. Leo, ever the observant child, looked between them. Does this mean, no matter what, we're a team? Amelia and Ethan exchanged a glance, hands still entwined. Always, they said together. The night deepened, stars appearing one by one in the inky sky. Ethan held his family close, feeling the weight of the past years, the pain, the loss, the fear, dissolve into this quiet, irreplaceable moment. There was no press, no judgment, no external expectation. Only the unshakable bond they had forged through trials, laughter, tears, and unwavering commitment. And in the quiet, Amelia leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder, her heart light. Do you ever think about what comes next? She asked. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Every day, but I know whatever comes, we'll face it together. Step by step, hand in hand, heart to heart. That's all we really need. Leo yawned, snuggling against them. I like this team, he mumbled sleepily. Amelia smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. The best team, she said. Ethan, watching the city lights twinkle below, felt a profound calm settle over him. There would be challenges, of course. Life never truly ceases to test, but for the first time, he believed in his capacity to rise, to embrace love fully, to choose happiness without reservation. As the three of them remained together on the balcony, the night air cool and scented faintly with jasmine, Ethan realized the truth he had long ignored. Life's meaning wasn't in the heights one climbed or the accolades achieved. It was in the hearts one touched, in the moments one shared, in the courage to love and be loved. And as they gazed upward, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Amelia whispered a wish, not out loud, but in her heart. Ethan squeezed her hand, and Leo murmured, I made one too. Together, they watched the night sky, a family united, a future unwritten but full of promise, and a love that had survived every storm. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel broken. He felt complete. And in that quiet, enduring night, their journey of trust, courage, and love reached its most radiant beginning. Thank you for listening to the story. Write your thoughts in the comments.